Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to those of you who are joining us online. There are people from Duluth who are joining us online, which is why we have mics and such set up. But I'm not projecting into the room, but if you can't hear me, let me know. Just by way of introduction, my name is Chris Lopez. I'm the Technology Enhanced Coordinator for LATIS, which is Liberal Arts Technologies and Innovation Services. So I'm located in CLA. Where me and my team support anything having to do with teaching and learning with technology. And we are part of the DASH network, Digital Arts, Sciences, and Humanities, and we'll tell you about that in a moment. Do you have a mic? Okay. You have a live mic. How about that? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Hootman, and I'm a librarian here in Wilson, and I'm part of the DASH program as well, which again stands for Digital Arts, Sciences, and Humanities. And my title is DASH Program Associate. And one of the things that I do, along with Chris, is provide workshops. But we're going to get to our services here in just a second.
Maybe we should talk about the agenda.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for the agenda for today, kind of how we want to map out our time for the hour and a half that we have here, is we want to start with some introductions and talking about DASH as a whole, like what it is and what kind of services it includes. And we probably could name our partners too. That might be a nice thing to add.
We should do that. Yeah.
And then we'll spend some time talking about setting up your domain and digital project, just conceptually how that works. And then a little bit of time on planning and creating a planning process that is for your project. Selecting applications, so both Chris and I are going to be going over what's in the title of this workshop, the applications Omeka and Scalar. And then at the very end, we'll have some more time for Q&A, but really, since this is a nice small group, you should feel free to ask questions throughout. You know, don't worry about holding them or anything. Just raise your hand, though, so that I can get to you with this mic, because we want our Duluth folks to be able to hear your question, too. Okay?
All right.
Okay, so DASH services first. Just conceptually, we support teaching, research, and creative work here at the U. And more specifically, on the next slide, we've got mapped out more like specific types of services we provide. Individual consultations makes up quite a bit of work, would you say? Mm-hmm. Chris does a lot of consulting. Class visits, we can come to your class and we can present on DASH domains. We can talk about that. We can talk about other DASH services. We can talk about digital work as well. Workshops, like today, this is one of them. But we also host public lectures on campus, and we host other kinds of workshops by guest speakers too. So we got one tomorrow actually on programming languages. So we offer a broad range of educational opportunities. We also have guides. This is on our website at DASH 101, a guide to digital tools and methodologies, project support, scripting, prototyping support, and developing communities of practice. But today, as I've got highlighted, we're really zeroing in on the service, web hosting, and our DASH domains part of the work we do.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, does anybody have questions about our services that we provide?
Does anybody have any questions about services?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted, yes, I mean, so this gives you a sense of some of the types of projects that we do work on. I mean, so any digital project, so if you're creating a map, online exhibit, which we're going to talk about today, I mean, if you want to set up a blog, digital storytelling, I mean, there's a whole range. All right, so first of all, I want to talk about DASH domains, and...
Oh, Chris?
Yeah.
I just wanted to remind the folks in Duluth, if you want to, if you have a burning question and you'd like to ask, just go ahead and email me, Jennifer. I sent you several emails, and those here in person got them today as well, about the workshop. So you should have my email in hand, and I'll be able to just jump over to my computer a couple times and check to see if you have any burning questions. If not, please feel free to email us after. So sorry, Chris, I just wanted to
add that
no
problem. Well, so what is DASH Domains? DASH Domains, basically, it's this is a pilot project, so that's one good thing to know. And through this pilot project, we provide web space and applications, and you can create your digital presence. So I think one very important thing to keep in mind about this project is that it's not, I mean, you can certainly use this to do one thing. So let's say you want to create an online exhibit, or if you want to put your research out there online, or if you have a digital storytelling project, any research project. I mean, there are a number of things that you can do. But with dash domains, the key is that you're creating a digital presence. So, when you're setting up a domain, you're setting up your web space. And within that web space, you can install as many applications as you like. So you can use a directory to create a WordPress site, and you can blog about your research. You can use a WordPress installation or Scalar for a class project within that space. So I think thinking about what a domain is and how to manage one, this is very much part of this project. And this definitely connects to Dash services because we provide consultations, but we don't do production work. And the reason for that is that we think that, that learning how to use the technology is part of the experience. Whether you are a researcher, instructor, or student. So we'll point you in the right direction, but we expect you to dig around and get your hands dirty and make your own stuff because that's part of the fun. So I just want to show you a little bit about what Dash Domains is about, just what happens when you log in, what it looks like. I think it's always good to see what it looks like. So here you see I have logged. This is my own domain. This is the control panel or the seed panel. And this is where I install applications. And so we're not going to take you through this step by step because you haven't set up a domain yet. So but I'll talk about how to do that. But I just kind of wanted to show what it looks like. So in this control panel, actually this is kind of where a lot of the action happens. So you can see I've installed but not really developed. I have a WordPress site, I have a couple of Omeka sites, I have a Scalar sandbox, I have a wiki. And if you look at the available number of applications, let's see, the applications browser, there's all kinds of stuff back there. And it comes under different categories. So again, this is what you're going to see if you set up your own domain. So somewhere buried in there is, if you look under content management, you have a whole lot of tools at your disposal. And right here, so these are the big three: WordPress, Omeka, Scalar, and somewhere in here, we also have, there it is, Drupal. So Drupal is something that's provided by the Office of Information Technology. It's centrally supported, but you can also set one up on your Dash domain. So my recommendation would be to skip a lot of this stuff. If you want to experiment with it, feel free. But really, the reason that we're zeroing in on those three applications, WordPress, Omeka, and Scalar, is that we think for the types of digital projects that you would do for teaching and research, they're probably the best ones. Another reason to consider those as opposed to all this other stuff is that because this is a pilot project, we haven't yet decided if we're going to continue. So that might, and all kinds, so think about the life of your project. That, the service might end, although it's likely that we're going to extend it for another year. Your project might end. You might go somewhere else, into a different institution. So think about migration, right? And that's one of the reasons that we recommend those 3 or maybe 4th applications, right? So plan ahead. And beyond that, I'm not going to show you much in the C panel, but there's this, I don't know. I love the name of the Installatron. It's a lot of fun to install an application, and it's really easy. It takes seconds. Now, before you do that, though, you have to think about how you're going to name your domain. Okay, so there's the first piece of advice. Second piece of advice, and put some thought into your name. So when you log in, what you will see, and I don't know why it didn't refresh, is that for the very first time, it's going to prompt you to name your domain. And what you're going to see is a blank in front of the URL dash.umn.edu. So you can name it anything you want. You can name it after your class, you can name it after your project, you can name it after yourself. But, keep in mind, again, your web presence. What do you want to communicate through your URL? What is this about? It might be that you name it after your research topic. Well, I mean, in that case, think about, is all of your content going to be related to your research, and maybe you want to do something else. So think ahead. Think about, as you install stuff, you're going to create subdirectories, and that's where your content is going to live. So again, I mean, I'll point you in the direction of resources. There's already stuff on the Dash site, but the moral of the story here is think about your domain name before you name it. Okay. Are we going to start with Omeka, or are we going to go back to WordPress?
I guess either way.
I forget what we planned. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, we're going to take a quick peek at planning.
Oh, yes, planning, of course.
So we're going to talk a little bit about planning, and you should have I'm going to show us. There we go. Oops. There. You should have a handout as well that has a little diagram about planning the process. It's definitely not comprehensive. It's just like basically trying to bring awareness around pre-production planning and that sort of thing. So it's just some questions to think about, and there are a lot more questions beyond that as well. But on that handout, I'm going to grab it too. So these are the pieces to it. In regards to your project, and it's going, if it's a digital project, ask yourself some really important questions, such as basically, how will your research be enhanced or transformed via a digital platform or application? Like, what is the purpose of the digital piece to the work? What's it servicing, and how is it going to help your project? Okay, because that'll help you in the selection process down the road in terms of what applications you're using, because there's lots of different types of applications to look into and to use. Might even help you to zero in on what specific individual you need to contact and talk to regarding your digital project or consult with. Also, your audience and approach. Who is your audience, first of all, right? I mean, that's just a real basic question to think about. Who's going to be looking at your digital work? Will it be public or private? And if it is public, is there any element to engaging with your audience? I mean, do you want to engage your audience or interact in some kind of way through the digital project? If you do, that'll have implications upon which pieces of technology that you work into your digital project, right? It'll affect a lot of other choices that you make. Technology selection, and that's one of the things, again, that this workshop is honing in on, the 3 applications again. So it's important to think about which digital platform will best service your project. How will it address the project's needs? And that's another question to ask yourself too. What are the needs of your project, right? Lots of questions to ask yourself and think about, okay? Because there's lots of choices to make amongst your tools that you'll employ. And planning, that's basically what this piece is about anyway, but you will need to plan for your technology. And in this on the diagram, it's the one in the middle with the green. And actually, that could be a workshop in and of itself. I mean, that's a really huge piece. So like I said, this handout, this diagram is not comprehensive, because if you think about it here, in terms of technology planning, you want to ask yourself what technology aspects need to be considered in your project, right? And sometimes you're going to be able to answer many of them in the beginning, but sometimes you're going to be answering them as you go along as well, depending on how your project's working out, right? You might make some changes as you go. But in terms of your assets, that's one thing to think about. And assets, for instance, like an example of that could be any kind of multimedia. Could be an asset for your digital project. Yeah. So you really want to think about how you're organizing those, where you're storing them, where do they live permanently, how are they going to be integrated into your digital work, and that piece can be huge. So you got to think about storage space as well. And I think storage space will be addressed again when we talk about Omeka, because there is a limit to storage space, at least in Dash domains. So think for instance, one way of handling assets is to utilize your Google Drive for multimedia and use that as your storage. Okay. Templating and architecture If you're developing a site for your digital project, for instance, you want to think about the architecture of it, and navigation, and plugins. What kind of plugins would you use? Omeka has different kind of plugins that work really great with Omeka. WordPress has thousands upon thousands of plugins that work really well with WordPress. So there's lots of different choices involved there as well. So again, under technology planning, that's a really huge piece of your project. So in the pre-production phase, I mean, there's lots of things to sift through and to think about before you actually start putting things together and putting it out there. Also, the project life cycle. It'd be interesting if our projects had lifestyles. Life cycle is really important to think about as well. Is there an end to your project? Does it have a life that's definite, like a certain amount of time and then that's it? Or will you share and maintain that digital project for the foreseeable future? I mean, what is that process, that timeline? It's kind of timeline based, as well as thinking about long-term care, right? So it's like, a puppy or a kitten, It may be free, but then there's all of the care that you have to give that pet, right? So this is kind of the same thing. There's long-term maintenance and care to think about as well. And then this idea of circling back, that this is a cyclical process, it's not necessarily linear, that you might get started and then have to go back and answer some other questions. You might make changes along the way, try something out. That doesn't work, try something different. And that's perfectly okay. But also circling back, let's say you have your completed digital project the way in which you imagined. It's good to ask yourself what you're using and the technology choices you made. Is it servicing your project needs in the way that you want it to? Is it addressing everything that you need it to? So coming back to the beginning again and asking, is it transforming or is it enhancing your work? Okay, so again, not exhaustive diagram, but just kind of a launch point to think about all these different pieces to the project in pre-production. Yeah?
So my understanding then that the two primary benefits to batch domain is that it's a location to consolidate various digital projects that you're working on. Okay, and then by doing so, by willingness to have that domain, you then get the benefit of getting consultation on these individual projects.
Yeah.
WordPress and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so then you were talking about migration, and if we do, if we do say, okay, I'm going to do all my WordPress and I'm making all this stuff through this domain,
yep,
and then I'm leaving in a year or two, what are the, what sort of things are in place that allow things to have continuity and life beyond?
Yeah,
here?
that's an excellent question because many of you won't be here for your life. So there is a definite period, hopefully for those who want to move, do something else, that you'll need to be able to move your projects to a different location off of domains somewhere else, and that can be, we can help get you started with that. That'll be your work to do, but we can definitely provide some guidance and consultation around that. But WordPress, for instance, which I'll be talking about, is definitely exportable and can be moved to a different domain, which you'll likely have to pay for when you're on, in another situation. This is free through being faculty staff at the U. But but we can definitely help with that transition. That's another thing too. Right.
You could, you can host them yourself. Actually, our vendor is called Reclaim Hosting, and this started at a university. This project, and it was called Domain of One's Own, and the idea was to give every student who wanted one a domain that they could manage. So the nice thing is, now that they're a company, it's really inexpensive if you want to migrate your stuff to them. I think for faculty and professionals, it's $50 a year. For students, it's $30 a year. That is such a good deal, and they are so good. I mean, they respond so quickly. Yeah. So you can set up WordPress on your own, but it's kind of buggy. And especially when you start playing around with templates and plugins and stuff. So anyway, it's not. I hate to sound like the sales pitch here, but really, this is a really good option. So you do have options. Also, if you go to another institution, It all kind of depends that, you might find that, your college or the university, they might host stuff locally for you. There's, just think about the options as you please someday.
Claim domain is something that those rates that you were quoting, those are rates that are extended to faculty and stuff here or in?
Just anywhere. So if you, and so you would deal with them directly. The other piece of this is that so we provide a University of Minnesota URL. This is by design. We wanted to have a collection of Dash projects that were easily identifiable. You also have to think about claiming and purchasing your own domain. So there's a fee involved in that. So, yeah.
So you have choices, and I think some pretty good choices too.
Yeah,
affordable choices, comparatively speaking. So yeah. Thanks for asking that question. Again, if the Duluth people didn't hear, it was about what happens to your work after you graduate, or you move on to another institution, or just maybe out into a different employment opportunity, maybe. That we were explaining that you have many different options. You could keep it with routine, which is what we're using for Dash domains, and then you'd be responsible for paying for that, which is very affordable. Or we can help you with transitioning, exporting that platform or your work to another domain. Okay, just wanted to sum that up in case that wasn't all captured. All right. In terms of selecting the application, again, these are the 3 applications we want to talk about, WordPress being one of them. WordPress is extremely popular, and I think it's a good percentage of websites online, like maybe 25% or more of the sites use WordPress that are out there. So it's a big number, big percentage, and there's a reason for that. I think WordPress is really, when you compare it to a lot of different platforms, it's very user-friendly in many ways. Not that it doesn't have its own challenges or bugs, but it's something that I think that the learning curve isn't quite as steep maybe as some other products. So you can make it look cooler and sexier, easier than some other platforms, if that's important. All right, so some of the key features that I just want to highlight with WordPress. It's very flexible CMS, content management system, that you can use in lots of different ways. I think that oftentimes maybe a lot of folks think of it as a blog, and it is a blog platform, but it's also a blank slate, really. It's just a CMS where you can have any kind of content in that framework as you want. It could be any kind of website. We're using WordPress for our Dash website. You can have your portfolio on it, the portfolio of all your work, so you can have a personal website too. So it can be a host for whatever kind of work you're doing. In terms of user management, what's really nice about this, and some of the other platforms we're talking about too, Omeka and Scalar do the same thing, but what's nice is that you can have individual or multiple collaborators very easily, so you can set different permission levels. You can have as many different admins to the site as you want, which is the greatest amount of permission, or you can have invite people to just be editors, not site admins, so lots of different levels there. Simplicity. I think it is rather simple. It's a WYSIWYG sort of based platform. There's also these page builders you can use that help you template out a page without using code. However, if you know some code or if you have a lot of coding skills, well, that's great because you can do a lot of customization then. So if you have the skills, terrific. Customize away if you need to. If you don't sweat it. It's really very much a plug-and-play kind of platform. Audience engagement, there's a lot of different built-in features to WordPress as well as plugins that you can use to engage with your audience in different ways. I think commenting feature is just a real default kind of example of that. It is multilingual in the sense that you can set your WordPress platform to a variety of different languages, which is nice. That's built in. But I've been doing a little bit of digging into multilingual plugins for a project that I'm supporting. And what I'm finding out is rather pretty cool. So there's a lot of different plugins, as you might imagine, that speak to multilingual use in WordPress. Like, lots. It's like, kind of in an overwhelming way. But there's about top 4 or 5 or maybe half a dozen. And in reviewing many of those, there are automatic translators, like very popular Google Translate. Okay. There's also some semi-automatic, which uses like Ajax Translator Revolution, I think is the plugin, where it utilizes Google Translate and does everything automatically, but allows you to go in and make your manual changes. So I think that's pretty cool. Or if you want to just create your own translation to something, you can. So it offers you both worlds. And there are heavier plugins like WPML WPML that is very popular, that is completely manual. So basically, it's a plugin to help you translate all of your own content. And you can also, it allows for a paying of a third party to help with translation if you choose to purchase that. And that's like an ongoing piece. So that's a little more expensive, a little more of a commitment, and takes a lot more work. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that forward because that's something I've been working on lately that I thought was pretty interesting. Publishing tools. So basically what's nice, you can create drafts, you can schedule a publication, so you can write something up and give a date and time to when you want it to be published live. You can always go back and revise. There's a way to even go back to previous iterations of a page that you've created and published. You can make it private or public. It does give you a fairly decent way, easy way to manage your media. It's an easy uploader that you can also apply alt text to, which is really important for accessibility with your multimedia. There's some editing capability, but I wouldn't use it as a strong editing tool for multimedia. Themes, thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon I don't know, it just seems like there's a never-ending sea of theme choices in WordPress out there, which is great. It's a nice challenge, I think, to have to sift through those. There's lots of different free ones, so I would check out the free ones first because there's a lot of good ones that offer a lot of functionality. But if you wanted to purchase a theme, there's some really good ones, high-quality, robust themes that cost under $70, for instance, or under $60. They can, you know, again, in the broad scheme of things, it's somewhat affordable, or very affordable, especially if you're working in a department or a college unit. And last year, again, the plugins I've mentioned already. There's lots of different ones. You can go to the WordPress plugin directory and search for different functionality that you're looking for, and you can see those. The only thing that I would just caution you about when you look at plugins, make sure you're reviewing those, as well as themes. It'll provide reviewer notes. There'll be reviews on each one of those. Read through those and see that. Check when it was created. Check when it was last updated. You don't want to necessarily activate an old plugin that has really bad reviews. You know, you want to make sure you're getting a good tool to put in there. Any questions about some of these key features? Okay, benefits, I'm just going to run through pretty quickly here. Again, benefits, I think we're kind of pointing out that there is a no cost, especially if you use one of the free themes through our dash domains we're hosting in this particular example. And it can be exported, like we've already talked about. There is support in terms of learning about how to use WordPress. We have our subscription, university-wide subscription to lynda.com. There's some really good training there. You can also find some support through the plugin directory, and support forms and documentation are really the way in which technical support is provided to WordPress users. All right, so I want to take a quick look at some of these examples that I have that I like to pull out just to showcase some things that I particularly like, or that I think showcase something nice. So I have the URLs up there on the board, and some of you I think have already taken a look, but if you want to bring up the Outing-Chan website, this was created, I'm going to get my notes here, by a professor at St. Olaf. So right here in Minnesota. And I'm just going to go to that website as well. Okay. Am I doing that? Am I selecting the right one? Oh.
Jennifer, there's no reason you need to stay in the presentation. I mean,
I can exit that?
yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. All right. So the WordAttention is this magnificent sculpture in China. And I just want to give you a couple minutes to take a look at it, and then I want to get your thoughts about the website. And there's something in particular that I wanted to kind of focus on too, but try to think about it. The reason I bring some of these up is it could be inspirational, certainly, you know, to kind of generate some ideas about how WordPress sites have been used or how various plugins are used. But also, I think that it's nice to break it down too, right? It's kind of interesting to see what are some of the tools that have been used to create some of these things in the website. So take just a couple of moments there. So for just this one, we're going to play Miriam Posner's How Did They Make That? Just a little bit. I think it's a fun game to play. And sometimes you can't really find out unless you actually email the author and ask some questions about it, which I think is always a good idea. So this particular website I think is pretty cool. It actually is showcasing a really cool World Heritage site. But what interesting things did you see on the site that you think, or you wonder about what tool they used to create? Yeah, okay, let me go there. The interactive one? Yeah. Yeah, so what do you think about that? It is super cool. This was actually hand-drawn by an art Asian studies major at St. Olaf. And so that is how that illustration was created. And then, of course, when you roll over, if you check this out, you probably noticed that there's these hotspots. All right. So that actually is a plugin that they're using here that creates the hotspots. And when you click on them, you get a pop-up that shows the image of the item in full color and a little information about a little descriptive information. And of course, you can slide, because it is a very huge site, sculpture site. You can slide and run through. Okay, so I don't know. I'm just going to take a shot here. Does anybody know, perchance, what plugin was used? I didn't when I looked at it. I had to ask. Okay, the plugin is DrawAttention. Draw, as in draw attention. So that's a really cool plugin to use. I do believe it's at a cost, but again, a lot of things, you know, WordPress can sort of nickel and dime you because they're not super expensive. Most things, especially if you're just doing a regular license, not like an institutional or corporate kind of license. So DrawAttention is this really cool plugin that they're using for this item, which is, I think, a really neat thing to do. And what about anything else? Did you notice on the site? And you know, this was the highlight for me, but anything else? Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think it demonstrates a way in which WordPress can be used to showcase and hone in on a huge project like this one that the professor has been working on for years and put everything together in one spot and provide that publicly, which I think is awesome. Kind of reminds me, too, you can also use it as a portfolio where it showcases a lot of different work you've done. What else?
I'm looking at the text section. That's, I mean, maybe this is kind of what you're talking about with the resources, but just that it's all sorts of things. I mean, it's, you know, it's not just, okay, here's a blob of text. Here's, you know, here's a website. Here's a manuscript. Here's a thesis as, you know, a published PDF. I like the way that's all presented there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think that this is a nice. Yeah, and that's a good catch. There's lots of different types of materials that are posted here, and this is just a regular web page. You know, there's not a fancy plugin used here. So again, it gives you an idea of how it can be used. There's also the walking tour, which uses an image gallery, which I believe probably came with the theme. A lot of themes have these built in. And the theme that was used was Divi theme, and that is a for-cost theme that they used. And there's also, I'll just quickly point out too, there's some language translation on the site. Oops. So there is some translation that occurs. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's everywhere. Some of the menus still the same in English, but there is quite a bit of other translated text. So again, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of multilingual things that you can think about for your site. Okay, let's take a quick peek at the other one. We'll go faster with this one. The romanticdigitalprojects.wordpress.com. Let's take a quick peek at that. And I think what's interesting to me about this one, just to kind of highlight why I pull it up as an example, is again how it's used. In this way, it's used for a course that this individual is teaching. If you take a look at the menu in the middle, there's model projects from students, so it's highlighting student work that have also used WordPress. So there's lots of different examples of how students have used WordPress, which is nice. So I encourage you to look through those. There's also course materials, video tutorials, and it's kind of meta in a way because not only is the instructor utilizing WordPress as a platform for the course, but is also using it to teach WordPress. So it's both, which is, I think, a neat example. Okay, and sorry to rush you on, but let's take a quick look at umbrasearchblog.org, because you can always go back and take a look at these and dig a little bit deeper. umbrasearchblog.org, and I do have the URL over there. And for those of you online, I do have the links in the PDF documents that I sent, so you should be able to click and go to those. And take a look. This is a completely different type of theme that's been used. And this is interesting. This is a theme for a digital resource that is about primary sources. UmbraSearch searches African American history, special collections and archives throughout the United States and returns results, which is super cool resource. And so this is their blog. And this layout, I forget the name of it, but this layout was a cooking example when I first looked it up, which is really very cool, like different recipes you can imagine. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You can take inspiration from lots of different avenues, like don't just look at educational or research-oriented themes. Take a look at a lot of different ones. It'll give you some interesting, hopefully inspirational ideas about how to do that. And one thing, since this is really big, the other thing I want to quickly point out, a plugin that's used under the Haley Q. Brown example in this blog is Timeline.js. And Omeka has Neatline,
Yeah.
which is also a timeline plugin. And if you click on that, you can see what a timeline.js timeline looks like. And this is a very easy one from the Night Lab to use. If you Google timeline.js, you will find the resource and be able to use it pretty quickly. They provide the steps for you on that page about how to do it. Okay, and I won't really talk about this one as much, but I wanted you to take a look at Miriam Posner's blog on how did they make that. Again, it's a fun game to play with yourself or with your close friends, right? Party game. Yeah. But it is really cool because she kind of breaks down these different types of digital projects that have been made in terms of what kind of plugins were used or what you can expect skill-wise, that sort of thing. So it's a cool site. Any questions about this? And any last-minute comments that you might have seen something on any one of the examples? I know we rushed through the last two, but I want to make time for other applications. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ah, okay, so the style of, let me go back. This kind of style that they have, you're saying, did they create that? This would be templated. This is part of a theme. Oh. Yes. So it displays on the home page. I gotcha. Yeah, yeah. And I think that, I mean, I don't know this theme, but from my experience, I'm guessing that there is one spot to plug in your text and your images, and the template creates this look and feel. So that's what's really, it's probably a type of widget or template that's employed here. So that's what makes a lot of these themes so powerful, is that you don't have to really know, much about coding or anything like that. You can focus more on your content, and you can still make it look pretty cool because you don't have to spend a ton of time to make it look a certain way. Now, if you want to customize something, you want to make changes to the template, that's where coding skills and that's where more time comes in. But it depends on what you want to do. Yeah, good question. Okay. I think we are on to Omeka.
We're on to Omeka.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So the name Omeka, they named this. It's a Swahili word. It means to display or lay out your wares, to speak out or to spread out, unpack. And the reason this is relevant is because what Omeka is really good for, is to not only create websites, but to create collections and exhibits, right? I mean, so this is the tool that you want if you have a collection of digitized artifacts and you want to put them online, and on top of that, that you want to, tell some kind of story about them. So, I mean, our first stop is this online exhibit about Abraham Lincoln at 200. And this is a collaboration between the Newberry Library and a couple of other institutions, I forget which, but you can read about the project if you're interested. And so I just wanted to talk about a couple of features of Omeka, especially in comparison to WordPress and later Scalar. So one thing to look at is that, I mean, all of these support multimedia, but the thing to think about is that they support multimedia in different ways. I mean, so in WordPress, you can embed images, videos, I mean, pretty much audio, anything you want. Same thing with Omeka, although it works a little bit differently, and I'll explain that shortly. So what you see here on the screen, this looks like a normal website. I'll point out that one thing I like about it is that so far, it's not super text heavy. And so, this is something you want to think about as you're moving your stuff online. Think about how you're going to use a range of media, including images, video, and text combined to tell your story. But what we see here, so you look at Lincoln in the West and the fiery tribal. And in Omeka terms, actually what they've done is that they've created two different exhibits, right? I mean, so this isn't just one thing about Lincoln, this is two separate exhibits about Abraham Lincoln. And you can also view this as a collection. So this is where Omeka becomes distinctive. That if you have, again, letters, documents, videos, photographs, you can create an online collection of them that people can browse and view as they wish. This is, it's not just about the images, that as you add them in the back, it's going to ask you to look at all the metadata that you want to attach to it. I mean, so the nice thing about this is that this is searchable. I mean, that you can actually, create keywords, or, they can search by title, they can search by whoever the creator was. And this is pretty much how it's going to display, right? I mean, so, this is a whole nother story that you can tell about your content. I just want to point out something about Omeka, that especially if you're using it within Dash domains, that it's really, there are plugins that you can use in order to embed your stuff, but what Omeka really wants you to do is upload it. So that means getting files into the space. Now, the tricky thing about Dash domains is that there is a size limit on your entire domain, which is 1 gigabyte. So, I mean, that's okay. You can get a lot of photos up there. But if you're working with video, not so much. So that is definitely something to consider. If you have a project and you really need more space, you can write Dash domains help, which is me, basically, at this point. And I can increase your space for you. Yes?
Could you use this to make a collection of websites that are related to your topic?
I think so. So tell me more about what you have in mind.
So trying to do a community engagement project.
Okay.
And we're trying to put together just a group of 10 websites.
Okay.
That will, be in the community and display them with metadata.
Okay.
So, it's not super sophisticated, but you can have it, have the website sort of as objects rather than individual.
Right. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of how that would work. And I mean, for me, there are a couple of considerations here. Is that, I mean, first of all, so which of these three, Scalar, Omeka, WordPress, I mean, you could display websites in all of them, but it's not like you have to link to a website. You can't really embed to it. So I'm wondering, like, from a user's point of view, like what the view would be like and what their expectations would be as they're kind of clicking around, right? I mean, because if you could have an image, but, then you want to make sure that, you're using, yeah, exactly, that it's going to go somewhere. So I would think in terms of, I mean, the nice thing about Omeka is that, I mean, it does, the metadata is based on Dublin Core. I mean, so you have those standards in place. But, I mean, with WordPress, you can still tag things. So, I mean, you could create your own metadata scheme using WordPress. It's something I'd want to think about. Yeah, because, I mean, websites are tricky. But, yeah. Yeah, sure. I hope that helps. And yes, questions about it?
Is there any way to link this to the database?
I'm going to catch you on here real quick. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, my question was if there is a way to plug this into a SQL database or something.
Oh, okay. So what kind of database do you have in mind?
Like a SQL database.
And so what would be in that database that you would want to, would it be connected to, or it's populating the site somehow, or?
Yeah, it's populating the site.
Right. If it's populating the site, and Mike said here, I'll just repeat what you said. So, I mean, if you're using a database to populate the site, I'm not sure that you could probably work something out, but Omeka might not be your best choice because it already has that collection feature built into it.
Oh.
One thing that we have worked with is that, I don't know, tell me more about what you want in your database.
I didn't actually have anything particular in mind. I was
Okay.
just wondering about flexibility.
I'm going to take a quick detour here to show you Elevator, because that is something that, I mean, it could potentially be connected to any of these three tools. So let's see if I can find it. Okay. All right, so this is a digital content library. It's part of LATIS, and they've just shifted the way that they're archiving their materials. They're storing it in Elevator, which is an application that was developed here at the University of Minnesota by Colin McFadden, who happens to be one of my coworkers, and he develops amazing stuff. So let's just take a quick look at what collections they have. There we go. All right, so this is what Elevator looks like. And here we have, I mean, it looks like these are mainly stills, but maybe some video clips in there. I mean, so this is really media driven. This is, if you have a collection of stuff, especially if you're not interested in using Omeka, this could be a nice complement to either WordPress or Scalar, because what you get with this is you can create any metadata scheme that you want. It's very flexible in that regard. You can upload all different kinds of things. LATIS has been working on 3D imaging. I mean, so you can have that kind of stuff in Elevator. It's available to University of Minnesota people free of charge. It's available to anybody, but you have to have your own hosting. So I mean, you would probably buy space through Amazon. It's meant to work with Amazon, right? Right. So anyway, I mean, this is something that you might want to consider. So there's my little detour. Does that help? Yeah, okay, good. All right. And so I just wanted to show you another example of an Omeka site, just to give you a sense of how people have been using it at the university. This was, I worked with an anthropology professor on her class project. She asked her students to look at the history of incarceration in the state of Minnesota. So what you see on this site is the contributions of individual students, and they just kind of created this collection based on it. So again, I mean, you have your exhibits. And so each student created an exhibit. So this is where they got to do a little bit of writing and graded their artifacts. And then in the back, they created a common collection of, and you can create more than one. I mean, you can create as many collections as you like in Omeka site. So then they created this common collection of artifacts, and you can see, I mean, here are some newspaper clippings. They have photographs, all different kinds of things. So, I mean, just to kind of back up, think about, you know, if you have a project like this, how this is going to change your presentation of your research. Because, I mean, normally this kind of archival research, it lives, well, it often lives it could be in a library database. It could be, you know, part of, you know, an historical society. But I mean, this is kind of much more public facing. And what you get on top of this is that you get the collection, but you also tell the story about it. And that's where the content comes in. That's where you think about how you're going to organize your site in order so that, you know, people can navigate it well and make sense of it and understand what you're talking about. So there you have Omeka. Any questions? Oh, good. I covered everything, and I was really clear. It makes me so happy. Okay. Just a couple of other things that if you do get a dash domain, and if you look at what happens when you install something, let's see if I still have this up. Yeah. Okay. So if you look here, I mean, here's some really nice resources for you. So here's the site itself. This is where you log into the admin portion of it. I mean, you can bookmark it. You don't have to go in through your control panel to get it, but it also points you towards support. So if you're looking for WordPress support or Omeka or Scalar, then you can just log into the cPanel, and that's a really handy way to get it. Omeka support is very crowdsourced. It's driven by forums. And so if you go to the forums, or I mean, if you just Google, then I mean, you can find discussions about whatever it is you're looking for. And if you go to Omeka.org, I mean, so if you also Google, that's where you can start finding plugins. So, I mean, back to this card restoration in the archive, what you see here at the top is there's a little plugin that creates a carousel of images. I mean, so there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can do. Okay, let's talk about Scalar. Okay, Scalar, the creators, they don't explain why they named it that way, but what Scalar does, it is good for it's for book-like projects. And I'll explain how it is like a book and how it's not like an online book, especially in comparison to ebooks. But actually, I found the trailer, and let's hope that the sound is on, because we might have to do a little futzing around, but it looks like I have some nice speakers here. The trailer actually provides a really good explanation of what Scalar is all about, so I'm just going to show that to you. Let's see. Okay. There's speakers. Jennifer, do you know this room? Do I have to turn these on? Yeah. Yeah.
Either that or
Right. Yeah. Try playing it again and see what happens, because the sound is on. Yep. It's not muted. Here, let's do one more thing. What'd that do? You got some nice feedback. Okay. Well, you know what? I mean, the visuals here are very informative, so I'm going to play it for you anyway, and you can go back and listen to it later. Yeah. Oh, it's not cooperating with me. Dang it. I'm cursed. All right, you know what? I have a rule. If the technology is not working, I'm not going to fuss it. I'm just going to continue. So anyway, I'll just show you. No, that's fine. I mean, this happens. All right, I'm just going to show you, what Scalar is all about. So as I said, I mean, Scalar is book-like. And so that means that if you have a large project that involves some combination of writing, media, that you want to present, this is a good place to do it. And so so let me just point out some of the features that make Scalar a book and some of the features that make Scalar not quite a book. So what you get with Scalar, if you look over here, I pulled up, it has a table of contents. I mean, so you can organize your stuff into nice, tidy chapters and make this progression throughout the book. As you can see, I mean, it's probably, like I keep thinking about, you know, what's the comparison between this and an ebook? I mean, so in theory, you can add images to an ebook. But to me, I mean, the use of images, it looks more like WordPress to me, actually, in terms of that use. I mean, that you have these illustrative images and you can set up the page so that it's in different places. So in that sense, it's not like an ebook. A couple of other features that you should be aware of, it's that, I mean, Scalar is searchable. I mean, just like any of the other applications, including ebooks that we've been talking about. But I think that it's, you know, apart from that, particular kind of layout, this is kind of, it's like a new form of book, I would argue. And interestingly, this example that I found, this is a class project, I forget from where, but where students actually put together this bookish project on what is a book, what is the history of books, you know, what do we think about when we think about books. So the thing about Scalar is that besides the fact that you can create these more interactive kinds of pages, is that the structure of the book can, I mean, that table of contents is automatically generated, but you can also create different ways of getting through this book. You can create paths. And this is kind of cool. So, I mean, this is, I don't think that they did a lot to set up the paths, but I also wanted to show you that in the back, Scalar kind of auto-generates visualizations. Has anybody heard of D3? Yes, you're nodding. What do you know about D3?
I've just heard of it.
Okay.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay. D3 is used for data visualization, basically. And you can generate different views, but basically, I mean, it's what it's good for, it's for showing networks and relationships between things, right? So this is something that you can do through Scalar. You don't have to set it up. It just kind of does it. And then it's up to your reader to figure out how to make use of this, and also how to navigate the book based on that. So here's your path view. So that means that if you want to suggest alternate paths besides the table of contents that the reader takes to your book, you can set that up as you go, right? I mean, so that's kind of a cool feature. This is just one view. See if I can find more data visualizations. So here's the book in grid view, which is potentially interesting. I feel ambivalent about data visualizations. I think it takes work to get to know them. And let's see what else we have. And we have this beautiful radial view, which, I mean, that shows, you know, so in this visual way, it shows relationships between different aspects of the book. So in order to do this, you have the option of paths, but you can also tag your content, right? I mean, so you can create relationships between different pages, but you can also create tags to bring, you know, different pages under the same umbrella, kind of thing. Worth playing around with. Like one potential project I can think of, a while ago I worked with this art history professor who wanted her students to be able to map out theorists in the discipline and show their relationships to each other. And at the time, we didn't have Scalar, so I couldn't ask her to use that, but I think this would be a fantastic tool for that. Because, I mean, you're writing content, you're talking about the theorists and their contributions, but then you can show connections. Okay. Questions so far? All right, so other than that, I mean, besides that really fancy stuff, I mean, it's the pages, you can write about whatever you want. So, I mean, here's a nice splash page. Look at that beautiful image, and it directs you where to go next, and you can continue reading, right? Scalar also can be interactive. If you want, you can enable comments on the page, so you can invite your readers to come and interact with the text and talk to you about what they've learned. And it also, something to be aware of, though, is that it's all these pages show the versioning, right? So as you update the page, the nice thing is your previous versions don't get lost. But if your readers know what they're doing, they can get in there and see the edits that you made. So, so if you look at the very bottom, you see this is version 4. And there are the different versions. So you can turn that off. Yeah. But this is kind of interesting because, I mean, what this means is, I mean, we're used to books, you know, especially bound books, but even ebooks, it's very stable content, right? I mean, what you see is what you get from the content. So, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting that it's kind of in flux. There's more than one way to get through it. And you can use multimedia in this. You can embed videos. You can annotate them. I mean, you can do all different kinds of things with them. So, okay, questions about Scalar? I'm just going to take you real quick behind the scenes. This is a project that we worked on, which we decided not to make it a Scalar book. We moved all of this stuff to the website. I think that there's a lesson here in choosing the right tool for the job. I mean, just because we weren't, we weren't making use of all these wonderful features that I talked about. And the content wasn't just, wasn't that complicated or complex. So, again, start off with, ooh, this tool looks fun and I want to explore it. But really, I mean, think about all the features and how you're going to make use of them. But I just wanted to show you kind of what it looks like as you're editing. It's really quite simple. If only it would pull up the screen. Okay. So it's just your basic WYSIWYG interface. It's really easy. You can switch to HTML if you want. If you scroll down the page, you'll see that there are all different kinds of options in terms of how you structure the page. So that page that I showed you earlier, which is an introduction to a section that had that nice large image, you would want to make that would be a splash page, right? Is that what you set up for the -1001? Yes. Yeah, so think about that. Also, these are kind of fun to explore. Like, for instance, this is a new feature of Scalar, is that you can embed Google Maps and you can create content based on that. I tried it. The only downfall is that I had to Google the coordinates for each location that I wanted to add. But once I got the hang of it, I mean, you get a process in place and you do it. But, as you're creating content, I mean, we haven't even really touched on this, but mapping is a great way to tell stories. Timeline is a great way to tell stories about your content. So something to play around with. Yeah, so that's, you can edit for the relationships. So, I mean, you can add paths, comments, annotations, tags, I mean, whatever you want. So lots to experiment with. Okay. Okay, let's pose this question. So I'm curious, so we talked about WordPress, Omeka, and Scalar. What kinds of projects are you working on, and what are your thoughts about using one or these three?
I was going to say Scalar in particular is really exciting for me because I do a lot of computer science research, so being able to have data visualizations alongside writing is, I think, a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to try to get that up and running for some of the stuff I'm working on right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you make data visualizations?
I'm not very good at it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, I mean, this kind of auto-generates, but yeah. What else?
Coming with the mic. Sorry.
It will definitely be WordPress because I work with a combination of text and image all the time, so I think that's a great platform to put both where it's more of a essay style rather than a collection.
Right.
So, but now I'm aware of the other options in case I need to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love, the flexibility of WordPress in terms of creating sites versus blogs. I mean, you can still create a traditional blog and have your stuff appear in reverse chronological order. Anybody else?
Actually, I have another one.
Yeah.
Sorry. A couple of friends and I make a journal every couple of months that we just contribute works that we've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just thinking of using Omeka as kind of a more of like a gallery, or maybe WordPress more with the gallery function,
Right.
for kind of having a more localized place for all of those.
That makes sense. Yeah, and if you're talking about journals, then perhaps WordPress would be the easier one because you're not going to be fighting with all the features. And so I think that, one final word I would have, in terms of advice, and that it's not the final word, I always have advice. So a lot of my background is in writing and rhetoric, and so I think in terms of genre, what is this like? What comparisons can we make? So if WordPress is more about journaling and blogging, which I can't think of an analog counterpart to that, then, what are the possibilities, not just in terms of the content that you create, but how readers are going to make sense of it, how you generate your content, how you organize it. If you're thinking more like, what could I do with a book, then, then that's the comparison to make in Scalar, or online exhibits, right? That's for Omeka. But I think that's always a good starting point, because then you can think about, if you have a blog, even if you are updating it with regular entries, say that you decide I'm going to write about this once a week, you still want to provide some kind of framework for your audience. Why are they reading this stuff? What's the purpose of your blog? Where are you leading them with this? Does it complement your research, or is this where your research is going to happen? So, there are a lot of decisions to make. Yeah.
This is more a question, just overall, but in the projects that you supported, has there ever been any issue with copyright, with using sort of certain images or sources on websites, or is most of that covered by things like fair use?
Well, yeah. So the university libraries have a really good fair use analysis tool, and I think that material there is worth looking at. Fair use, you're making a determination based on 4 different factors, and so one of them is who's the audience going to be, how widely is this going to be disseminated, and that changes when you start putting stuff online as opposed to showing it in a classroom. So there are things that you can do. So one option, do the fair use analysis and think about whether you're going to use it. If you want to talk more about risk, we have a copyright librarian on campus. If her name is Nancy Sims, she's amazing. She lives and breathes copyright, and she explains it so well. So have you heard presentations from her? She's incredible, yeah. So there's
I'm going to write her name up here, too.
Yeah.
Nancy Sims.
Nancy Sims, yep. So, yeah. So she's the person to contact, and she's the one who authored the stuff on copyright. If you're working on a class, she'll come and talk to your class about this. A lot of people so they think about this. We have resources at the university. There are images that are available. I think it's through university relations, or maybe IT hosts them. I forget which, but it's already you have permission in advance to use it. So there's images, video, graphics, all kinds of stuff. You can also use Creative Commons search. It's search.creativecommons. I'll just do it. How's that? Show you what that looks like.
And these tools that we're talking about here, like what Chris is doing with the Creative Commons search, the IT stock, or not iStock, but the graphic stock and video stock that they have are, really great ways to get images, and you're going to feel secure in using them. And it's going to be a lot easier to use than, trying to just comb through, the wide open web. So.
Right. Yeah. Although I would say that so Creative Commons, it's not a thing. This is an organization that was started up to make people more aware of copyright. So they created this license. Jen, are you familiar with Creative Commons licenses? Okay, what do you tell me? What does it involve? I don't need to put you in the yeah.
Okay, not wanting to be on mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can do it. I just thought maybe you're sick of hearing.
Whatever, yeah, you can know about it.
Yeah.
No, just that's great place to go for, images in particular that you might want to dump in, and people can say, okay, it's okay to use this in this way, it's okay to use this in this larger scale way, and you can find good chance you can find what you might want, and you'll know exactly how it's okay to use it.
Exactly, yes. So what it does is that the creator chooses several options to tell you in advance how you can use their work. So some people, they're fine if you use their work as long as it's not for profit, or they require that you give them attribution, or you can use it any way you want. Just, you can mix it up. You can make money off of it. I mean, there are some people who are that generous. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is that Creative Commons, so this is a search engine that will lead you to stuff that's licensed, but you still need to look at the license and understand what they mean, right? So that's the key to Creative Commons. And I mean, libraries, librarians can advise you on images that are housed in the databases. And I mean, there's
that's true too. That's a really good point. Yeah, there's a lot of availability through library resources too. And another one that a go-to one for me is also Pixabay. I don't know if you know. There's lots of different websites out there with free images. Pixabay. Pixabay.com. And so that's like, kind of what we're talking about here, a website that you can go to that has, I think that should be it. Free images.
Yeah.
So, and because what I like to do is kind of have a bucket of places to go to look for images. Sometimes I find what I need, like here. Sometimes I find what I need through Creative Commons search. Sometimes I find what I need through the graphic stock. It just really depends on what I'm looking for, because each collection has different strengths and weaknesses, and you'll be surprised about what you see in some where it's just like it seems like it's really diverse, and other ones not at all. But so some have lots of animals and some don't have. It's just
right.
So it's good to kind of look in different places.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I use Flickr a lot, and
Flickr, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Flickr's. I mean there are a lot of people who license their stuff that way. Some of it's great. Some of it, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Good question. Thanks for asking that.
Yes. Yeah. Always comes up. Yep. Anything else?
I'm on a game show.
I'm just wondering which one of the three platforms would you recommend for using audio and video if you'd like to do a collection of, similar to a playlist, maybe. Which one would be best?
So actually, if it's a playlist and if it's video, I would recommend YouTube. And you might want to create a site to go along with it. Then you can embed the videos. But I mean, that's where, so on YouTube, I mean, of course, we're a Google campus, but the University of Minnesota OIT people, they recommend it for video for a lot of different reasons. I mean, first of all, because it's connected to everything that you do. But also because it means that you can embed your stuff so it's lighter weight, and you can create playlists, there are analytics. I mean, so there are a lot of advantages to using YouTube. By the way, I mean, you don't have to use any of these three applications. Google Sites is perfectly fine for some stuff, right? I mean, Google Sites is not the prettiest, but, it's perfectly functional. As far as audio, I had a consultation recently with, there were two Spanish instructors who are creating a podcast about the Spanish language in Minnesota, which is a great podcast, by the way. And they were looking, so this is audio only. And that's a little bit trickier. I think they ended up using SoundCloud for that. Because SoundCloud, I mean, is specifically for hosting audio stuff. Unfortunately, there's a feed.
And I'm glad you brought up SoundCloud. That's really super popular, and that can be used. And you can embed that in different, like in WordPress, I believe. Right. You can embed YouTube playlists in WordPress and Scalar. I don't know about Omeka, though, if you can embed video.
Probably, if I had a playlist, I would not put it in Omeka. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen one in Omeka.
It's not that kind of I don't know. It just doesn't. It's more like individual items.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And what was your comment just before I spoke? It reminded me of something. Shoot.
that you have to pay.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That actually did remind me of something.
Okay, good,
Okay.
yeah.
In my sort of investigating of different themes in WordPress, I did learn that there are some themes that have audio players built in. So if it's you're doing like lots of podcasting, you can utilize your theme. And if there is a part of that theme that has an audio player, you could use it that way. You can also look at the WordPress plugin directory for audio players.
Right.
So yeah, I'm just playing off of Chris's example of the podcast. But yeah, YouTube works really nicely with WordPress too. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, and that's the
yeah.
thing is that, I mean, when it comes to managing media, you want to have, think about the process. So you have your site where all of your stuff is displayed, but then you have to have a plan for storing and distributing and, embedding your media. So if you're making podcasts, that's a little trickier because what a podcast involves is you're not only creating this series of files that could be audio or video, you're wrapping that XML code around it because for a podcast, you want people to subscribe to it, right? I mean, it's easier for them if they don't have to keep going back to your site. So in that case, iTunes, SoundCloud, and then you add it to your site. All right.
One other thing, are there other questions right now anyway? You can feel free to contact Chris and I at any time.
Yeah.
Should have our contact on the handout. I do just want to show one thing on our Dash website real quick. Okay, I just wanted to point out, I mean, you might already be aware of this because you're here, but we do have a current events tab on our website. So if you want to go there and see what's coming up, that's where we list all of our events, workshops, public lectures, our news too. Even we've posted some job opportunities here. So lots of different types of items. We have our April Hacker Lunch coming up, and this might be really helpful too, depending on what your needs are after this workshop. If you want to meet 30 minutes with a developer to talk about a specific tool, if you click in, here are the different tools that they're ready to help you with. So if you're looking at any one of these, and it's broad ranging, you should sign up for a 30-minute window with a developer to talk about your questions.
Yes, and just, again, one more thing. I hate to say this at the very end of providing a lot of information, accessibility, figure it out because all different kinds of people are going to be using your site. So think about, how to make it accessible. And there's accessibility.umit.edu. And that's in the handout, right? I hope.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yes, yeah. But yeah, you can do consultations about it.
We also have our Dash Tools page, Dash 101, which is where you can dig into some tools that we've highlighted and described and linked to that provide more assistance and information around these different types of methodologies. So feel free to peruse those as well. Did you have a question?
Just to follow up on the Omeka option for sound.
Oh, yes.
You can't do that using the Neatline.
Oh, Neatline plugin.
Thank you so much, yeah.
All right. Yeah, Neatline plugin was just shared that it does embed sound.
Yeah.
Sound files. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.